Should we get into the games then? Should we start talking about some of the
matches? Yes, I'm sure that's what everybody wants us to talk about, the TSM game, which we'll start there because the other series was frankly incredibly boring. And I think the more interesting conversation about C900 Thieves is what should 100 Thieves do about their current situation, not because it was such an expected result in the game.
Oh, by the way,
horrible.
I'll give you the one little bit of juice we're going to get on that, and intentionally use that particular word. I tweeted this, but obviously I tweet so much stuff, like that's like saying, did he keep up with One Piece? Like, who the fuck could? There's 7,000 episodes. So if people don't know, right? When I was watching, I'm pretty sure it was the Cloud 900 Thieves match from my memory. There was one of the games, because that was a disgrace of a series. That was like a fucking older brother, just like when the parents go out, just holding the younger brother down, spitting in his face, slapping him, like, can't do it, holding his up, why are you hitting yourself, why are you hitting yourself? Like, it was a joke. One of those games, correct me if I'm wrong here, fans, didn't Freak just say that was like a beautiful game or something? So I did a tweet where I said, because I remember, like a boomer, one of the classic movies when I was a kid that was a comedy was a series called Problem Child, where the premise is, instead of being like straight up woman, like he's not the devil, it's just a kid who's just a really bad kid, right? And so it's a comedy, he just goes around doing all ridiculous shit, So one of the things he does in this series is they have the classic like wholesome Americana thing where like the girls have like a little lemonade stand, like lemonade stand, and then they're selling the lemonade, like $1 a cup, and then the idea is, people in your neighborhood come and they only really buy the lemonade. It's not great lemonade, they just buy the lemonade because it's a hot day and some kids are selling it, so you want to like make your community feel nice. So when they run out of lemonade, these girls, these little twins, tell like the Problem Child kid, like, well, go on then, make some, fill it up or whatever. So he just goes away, and because this is like a crude like teenage like / kids movie, he just goes away and he just pisses into the jug, right? And you can imagine, like a bit, he looked a bit dehydrated to be fair, but that could look a bit like a lemonade, right? When he brings it back, because this is a kids movie, it's never happened in real life, obviously. The dad of these like kids comes along like, oh, hey, some lemonade, yeah, I'll take a glass. And when he gets it, right, you're thinking he's going to drink it and be like, pfft. But instead of drinking it, he goes, tangy. That's Freak watching that series. It's like, I've said this a million times, like, Freak, you can't literally bring up a big pile of horse shit and go, oh, this is the richest Swiss chocolate I've ever had. Oh, the artisans in Switzerland. Freak, mate, don't sell me a false bill of goods. Like, that was a terrible series. What was beautiful about it? The only thing beautiful about it was like fucking everyone who's a Ryoma fan just being like, oh, well, it's that. Is it Groundhog's Day again? Fucking hell, fuck my life. Will this guy give me a break? Like,
I think Cloud9 played that series very well. It just wasn't a competitive series, and it wasn't particularly entertaining, in my opinion, right? So I don't know. I do want to talk about the whole Ryoma thing because I think that's a really difficult topic because everybody. I don't think there's a good answer to that problem, right? I think there is a fundamental issue at mid lane that 100 Thieves cannot solve, and that is really what's holding them back. But I do want to talk about the TSM series first because, oh my God, I was doing co-streaming with Doa for LCS with this, and I went over to Doa's house, and the quality of these games was just terrible. I mean, they were just terrible games of League of Legends. Like,
Monty, I know you don't always follow like what the TSM sub and the fans do, but I like to because obviously,
I look at it after the games.
When it comes to TSM, when it comes to TSM fans, I am a sadist. I just enjoy seeing them suffer because of all the shit they've done to me. So here's the thing, right? I'll give everyone a look because everyone knows TSM fans literally just like Men in Black, like delete their own memories and then just come up with like a new theory depending on whatever happens. So I'll tell everyone what the narrative was going into this playoff because they'll have changed it now and they'll have downvoted everything on the sub. Here's what the TSM fans really thought. It's fucking amazing because it's so delicious. They thought that this was the narrative of LCS Spring Playoffs, that TSM is the sleeper best team, but that Team Liquid is the second best team. And so this is the real final. And it doesn't matter who wins this one, right? Because Cloud9's overrated as fuck. So even if they lose here, it's fine. Whoever wins this one wins the LCS, but they'll meet up in the finals anyway. So you have to understand, like, at a minimum, that premise implies this should have been a banger. This was the true, like, final potentially. And it was anything but that. Now, I will say, just as an aside, to be fair, because I don't like to just like build a biased narrative, it is the case that like TSM looked way better in the regular split, but who gives a fuck? It's the playoffs now.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like for me, it's like I think TSM hard underperformed in that series, and I think Team Liquid got caught a bit on like getting baited by enemies inting. And then it makes the series just look like really Like,
so there were several like highlights for me that I just found incredibly hilarious. Like the longer I was watching this series on stream, I was just laughing my ass off because it was so egregious just how bad everything was. And so one of them was obviously TSM throwing, which is always hilarious. The second one is TSM not understanding what NAR does, which is actually infuriating to analysts because like the whole thing, what you guys see is it becomes like a meme where analysts are like, well, you know, NAR really isn't that great, but if you're a bad team and you literally like can't see the NAR bar or don't know where NAR is, then he can actually make plays, right? And so it seems like analysts are stupid because he's getting like all these 3-4 man ults, but when you actually watch the game, you realize that he's only getting these ults because the team that's getting ulted is playing extremely badly in terms of positioning in a team fight, rushing things instead of just waiting for him to go back into mini NAR. My favorite one was when TSM literally clumped against a wall with like 4 people and then just got ult. I was dying. I was like, this is horrific. And then the other one, Andre, like you're mentioning on Team Liquid side, they could be baited into anything, just anything at all. Yeah, it's like they had no vision and like they see like one guy and then they just massively overcommit and then lose the fight for no reason. And it's like, are you guys like, are you playing this game? You can't just go for the shiny thing that's being waved in front of you, right?
Sometimes it's hard to realize if that shiny thing is like another int or if they are just baiting, right? So that's what I mean by it. I think that TL in the first game was like okay, but then they slowly got like seemed like they played a bit worse throughout the series, and that's what I mean by like the quality of the series seemed to be dripped down. But to be honest, I feel like this is also, for me at least, a consequence of the playoffs being 1 week literally after of the regular split. So it at least true. In my opinion, you know, it's like it's a bit hard to like change that ship a bit that fast, especially when you're used to only have 3 days of practice. So I do want to see this series again. I think that we will maybe see it at the end of the losers bracket. It's possible to see it, and then maybe the result will be different. Like, I still want to believe that these teams are not inherently just bad, but TSM had a really bad day, and then TL got dragged on it, and I still think they can give us like a good series.
I mean, I think that TSM got mega tilted after throwing game 1 so hard, and I want to get your thoughts on this because the game started actually in a very interesting way in which I thought that there was a lot to discuss in that. So the way the draft was positioned, if you recall where they were going with everything, is that you kind of had the early like Renekton, Udyr, Azir picks, and then on the other side of Liquid, you had like Gnar, Hecarim, Orianna. So, you know, you look at the kind of first phase of the draft and you're thinking, okay, well, Liquid's definitely going for more of like the big team fight combos. They're going to be playing for late game objective fights, whereas TSM, they're probably going to prioritize top lane, like Renekton and Udyr getting kills on the Gnar early, right? That's like the assumption you would make. And then the second part of the draft is very interesting because then you see TSM kind of change to be more effective in late game team fights with MF Seraphine. And then you see Liquid say, okay, we're going to play kind of a more aggressive kill lane with Jhin Thresh that actually exerts kill pressure on MF Seraphine, right? So what I found interesting is the reaction to this from TSM was to do a delayed invade and then force vertical jungling, right? And they forced effectively the Hecarim to be on the top side of the map and the Udyr to be on the bottom side. So TSM was making a choice to power up their bot lane for late game team fights and avoid them getting killed early. But at the same time, they were sacrificing potentially Huni's ability to get kills early and be relevant on Renekton. And this is a fine choice if you can play around the Gnar, if the Gnar gets ahead, right? And the best thing about this for TSM was they actually got a kill on Alphari that they shouldn't have gotten because they saw him coming on a ward out of the jungle and Alphari fucked up, right? Alphari fucked up. So this was going so well for TSM in that they were still winning topside. And the only thing they had to do was really play around the AoE, right? And make sure that this Gnar was not a factor in the game. And because Liquid got a couple Drakes, and so they couldn't contest Soul, TSM couldn't force Soul, it ended up dragging out to this place where all that AoE damage was just increasingly relevant, right? So did you have any thoughts about, I mean, I don't know if you recall specifically, but around the vertical jungling and the decisions that you make in that scenario and which side of the map and like whether you're prioritizing top or bot lane? Because that is something that I thought was very interesting in terms of TSM's decision making.
Yeah, so I think that that's also something that is more into the Hecarim. Hecarim is probably one of the junglers that benefits the least when it comes to vertical jungling. Or at least is one of the junglers that you kind of want to invade the most, because like this is a jungler that if you disrupt his clear, he doesn't get as strong as he's supposed to get. But at the same time, what I felt that it was weird is when you have Renekton and then you decide to draft a Seraphine as a support or kind of like a not melee support where you can just kind of like standardize and play it a bit like as nothing will happen in bot lane, whereas if you're playing Seraphine, you do want to have control in the river because you don't want to give them the opportunity to be able to all in and to get push onto you. But once I see both Renekton and Seraphine, I know it's going to be hard for them to deal with it. But for me, the main issue is Seraphine doesn't scale as well without gold than with gold. So I still felt that even if they have that and they have the Azir and the MF, they will still be in a position where they are not favorable when it comes to team fights later on. So once you do that, then you give the enemy team early Drakes, and then you're forced to fight when it's something that you really don't want to do, right? Because if you vertical jungle towards top side, then you want to be able to have Renekton on side and be able to just keep on punishing it that way. But then you're forced to go into Drakes, and then you're forced into fighting Drakes, and you're just really bad at playing around the bar rage of Gnar. So it just gets a bit rough. I still think that invading early versus Hecarim is good. I think that the best way to approach it, especially versus Hecarim, and especially if you have a ranged support, is to just like invade red Raptors and then try to cross into your bot side jungle and make sure that you play for jungle lead instead of purely a split map scenario. I think that's more effective versus Hecarim and with Seraphine. But I still think it kind of like worked out. But you in order to do that, you needed to have a different support, I feel like.
I also think that Liquid actually probably had more of a shot this game early, but Tactical's build was super strange on Jhin. And by that, I mean, he went like Gale Force.
Phantom Dancer or something, wasn't it?
No. He went Gale Force. He went Gale Force, Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge, and he didn't build Lord Dominic's Regard until very, very late. So he was dealing basically no damage to the TSM frontline until the very, very end of the game. And so for me, watching this, like there was never any chance for them to get meaningful poke off to start these fights. And once they committed to the fights, we saw like obviously the MF and the Seraphine will have a huge, and the Azir will have huge effects on these kind of mid-game team fights. And I think if Jhin had built Gale Force straight into Lord Dominic's, this is a very different game. And I think TL wins a lot faster.
I think so too. Lord Dominic's right now seems to be kind of like really strong in a lot of builds. And when you see a bruiser top laner and a tanky jungler, you kind of need it. Like very fast in the game.
Yeah, so I thought like that actually delayed a lot of Liquid's potential win conditions in this game, and it forced the fight to just drag on forever and ever and ever. And also it was like Ori got Banshee's Veil first, so they basically between the Jhin and Ori itemization had like no mid-game damage, which means that again they should not have been able to take these dragons that actually prolonged the game. So with this itemization, the problem is that TSM should have been able to force Soul Point a lot sooner and like force those engages. But Team Liquid basically got so much free time that they could wait until they got to 6 items. And then they just come back and are able to take the game because TSM plays poorly at a Baron fight, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I thought this was really... I thought it was a very weird game, but I understand why TSM might have been really, really tilted after this. And I want to talk about the second game because I'd love to get your thoughts on.
Just a quick thought. One thing I want to ask actually about is, what do you think about that? Because one thing I didn't understand about this game one was like TSM had all these leads in the game. They had even like players, like obviously like fucking Spicker was ahead, everything's looking awesome to control the map. Why are they so bad at dragon fights? Like, they do exactly what you would never want, which is you stand like you're going to contest the dragon. You don't fight them. You don't hit the dragon. You watch them hit the dragon down. And this is what kills me. The worst quality of the last TSM lineup and this TSM lineup, in my opinion, is whenever they just leave Spicker and just fucking just wreck him completely. Because he's a jungler who has like, he's just a young man, so he has the naive dream that they're all going to follow up if you go for the fucking dragon. He wants to take those dragons and go for the last minute smite. So he does it all the time on Barons and Dragons. And the amount of times they just go, yeah, let's just let him die actually and pull back. And say, you got nothing from that. You didn't control it. Here's the maddest part. Even if you don't want to do it, like, make them not take it. Like, do something. Like, I don't understand. The shot calling looks terrible in this team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it has to do with the composition that they were taking as well. If you see throughout this game or throughout this series, I mean, the only let's say engaged support that TSM had was the game that they won. Other than that, I think they played. Let me actually check this.
Which is hilarious because if people don't know, literally fucking Sword Art's entire career is like he only plays the support engaged support. Exactly. He shit on the casters.
Right. They played 2 Nautilus games, right? They also played Nautilus at the last game. But the problem with the comp that TSM was running is that if you're not first on the spot, you'll never get the objective, right? You have no way to engage. Your engage is like Udyr running in and hopefully setting up a Seraphine ulti. Yeah. It's like you just hope for the best, right? So if you're not there first and you're not very good at controlling the choke points with the Seraphine ulti and the MF ulti and the Zir soldiers and whatnot, then like if enemy team starts to Drake, you won't really do anything, right? Orianna, like they start Drake, Orianna puts the ball, Udyr tries to run up, they can't because they just let Udyr pass and then they can ulti the whole team and then it's a disaster. So I think that in this case or especially in this game, I think it was more the habit that usually Sword Art is the one pulling the trigger or he has to be the one pulling the trigger in this team. And if he's playing Seraphine, there's no way that they'll do it. So they thought that they could still like, oh, we are ahead. We can just delay our tempo and be late in the river and make sure that we just retake it after we just walk up. But with their comp, they really can't. So I think it's more due to that. It happens a couple of times when they have engaged support, but that's just because I feel like that's just like hesitation, but at least it looks better when they have an engaged support and Sword Art can pull the trigger.